You may have learned over time to reduce yourself, to soften your intensity, to hold back your thoughts, to quiet your enthusiasm before it became noticeable. This was rarely a conscious decision. It often happened gradually in response to how others reacted. You may have noticed moments when your presence felt like too much, when your questions went further than expected, when your energy did not match the room. So you adjusted. You became more careful, more contained, more selective about what you showed. Not because you wanted to disappear, but because it seemed easier to fit. This adjustment can look like maturity, like self-control, like social awareness. But over time, it can begin to feel like shrinking. You may notice that parts of you stay unexpressed, that your curiosity gets edited, that your depth waits quietly while you present a simpler version of yourself. This is not dishonesty, it is adaptation. Adaptation can be useful, but it becomes costly when it turns into self-erasure. You do not need to become less to be acceptable. Intensity is not excess, it is presence. Your intensity may show up as enthusiasm, as sensitivity, as depth of focus, as emotional honesty. These qualities are not problems to solve. They are ways of engaging with life. You may have been told, directly or indirectly, that you should tone it down, be more neutral, be easier to handle. These messages often come wrapped in concern, in advice, in suggestions meant to help you succeed. But success that requires shrinking comes at a cost. You may begin to feel disconnected from yourself, as if you are living at a reduced volume, as if something essential is being held back. You may feel tired in ways that rest does not fix, because the exhaustion comes from suppression, not from effort. You are allowed to be whole. Being whole does not mean being unfiltered everywhere. It means not abandoning parts of yourself to belong. You may choose when to express your intensity, where it is safe, where it is welcome. Choice is different from reduction. Reduction happens when you believe your full self is unacceptable. Choice happens when you honor context without betraying yourself. You do not need to dilute your curiosity. You do not need to minimize your care. You do not need to flatten your inner world. There are environments that cannot meet your full presence. That does not mean your presence is wrong. It means the environment has limits. You may notice a habit of scanning others for comfort, adjusting yourself before anyone reacts, anticipating discomfort before it appears. This habit often develops in response to being misunderstood. It is a way of staying safe, but constant self-monitoring creates tension. You're allowed to relax that vigilance. You do not need to become smaller to reduce friction. Sometimes friction simply reveals incompatibility. You're not responsible for making yourself easier to digest. You may fear that if you stop shrinking, you will overwhelm others, that you will be rejected, that you will be seen as too much. These fears are understandable, but becoming less does not guarantee acceptance. It only guarantees distance from yourself. You are allowed to take up space in your own proportions, to be thoughtful, to be expressive, to be emotionally present. You may discover that when you stop holding back, something shifts internally. Your energy feels more stable. Your voice feels more grounded. Your presence feels less strained. This does not mean you will be received everywhere, but it does mean you will be real where you are. There are people who will meet you fully, who will not need you to edit yourself, who will recognize your intensity as sincerity rather than excess. These people may not be numerous, but they exist. You do not need to rush to find them. You do not need to perform for them. You simply need to remain intact. You are allowed to exist at your natural depth, to feel strongly, to care deeply, to think thoroughly. None of this needs correction. You do not need to become less. To be worthy of connection, to be respected, to belong. Belonging that requires shrinking is not belonging. You may still choose softness. You may still choose restraint. But let those choices come from self-respect, not from fear. You are not too much. You're not excessive. You are not overwhelming by nature. You are complete. You do not need to disappear in order to be safe. You do not need to reduce your inner world to make others comfortable. You are allowed to stay whole in a world that often asks people to fragment. You don't need to become less. You only need to be yourself without apology.